To people who are not believers, death is finality, the end, the eternal silence of non-existence. Hey there, Mission Control, and to everybody joining us for the first time, thanks for coming to the channel. Thanks for checking out this video. If you're brand new here, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself and the series that we're doing. For those that have been here before, you know the deal. Go get your drink, kick back, relax, and we'll have a good time here once I get through this. This is a series of videos that I just felt compelled to do, and I'm going to do them as long as I can. But I've been asked a series of questions by my family and friends that are really, really important. Quite honestly, they're really important. They're very good questions about my faith. So the title of this series is, You've Already Made the Choice. You're here to understand why you've made it. And before we get in, I got to tell you a little bit about myself. If you're brand new, again, you don't know who I am, and you maybe just click on things. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I've served in my community as a volunteer firefighter and a first responder. I'm an aerospace engineer. I have a master's in organizational leadership. I've had an amazing 20-plus year professional career, which includes having served in the Air Force, working on top secret space programs, very cool stuff, deploying to Baghdad, and working for a Boeing subsidiary overseeing new product development for unmanned aerial vehicles and systems. I'm now the Chief Operations and Technology Officer of a startup where we are trying to provide sustainable food and energy independence to local communities around the world, and one day off it, go space. I have a passion for engineering, and I love to explore all hard sciences such as physics. I've led people from all walks of life and have served both in the private sector and the military with amazing people of very diverse backgrounds and beliefs. And I believe in Jesus Christ. I don't agree with the concept of organized religion-based dogma. I believe in a personal relationship with Jesus, guided by the entity known as the Holy Spirit. You don't need a priest to know Jesus. I like to share some personal thoughts and experiences in this area, and I think it's pretty prudent that I share this little background about myself before we get going so you know where I'm coming from and who I am. So this is these questions that we're going to be going over are really big questions, such as, if God is a God of love, why does he allow bad things to happen? In this video, we're going to be going over, if God is love, why does he allow innocent children to be harmed? In future videos, we're going to be going over, why does God allow, in some cases, call for genocide? Is abortion actually called out as being wrong in the Bible? Is homosexuality okay? Is evolution correct? And should biblical teachings be used to create laws? And there's so much more that we can go on from there. We're, good questions that have come in from my family. So that's where we're going. And again, in this video, we're going to be doing, why does he allow innocent children to be harmed? So I have said every single video that it is important, context, context, context. Anyone who tries to answer these questions with a simple one-sentence answer is usually not doing justice to the person who asked the question. Certainly, and probably not meeting the person where they're at, and probably giving some form of, just out-of-the-box cookie-cutter, answer that is really impersonal. And usually probably dismissed by the person hearing it, quite honestly. So I've spent, I spent 6 videos. Yeah, I think it was five videos, excuse me. I just did my sixth. This is the seventh video. 5 videos just setting the context for these questions. And I've tried to go fast. These questions, they're not easy. If they were easy, nobody would be asking them, because it'd all be like textbook answers and everyone would be like, oh yeah, 2 + 2 = 4. Duh. We don't spend, years debating, decades debating, millennia debating these things, because they're easy questions and answers. These are hard questions, and they deserve to have good answers. And so in this series, I'm trying to give a lot of thought to these questions. So I am reading prepared remarks. So you're going to see my eyes doing the little back and forth thing here as I try to do good with that. But, it is what it is. I can't remember all this stuff. And I'm not shooting from the hip here. This is time spent in prayer and bringing these things up. And I do pray that the Lord is talking to one of you out there. I feel compelled to do this. Let's jump into this. So let's go ahead and jump into this. The question of, if God is love, why does he allow innocent children to be harmed, is another challenging question for both believers and non-believers. I'll ask you to please reference back to our previous 6 videos that go into detail to set the required context in order to answer this and other challenging questions posed by my family and friends. And those links are down below. In my last video, we discussed the question of, if God is love, why does he allow bad things to happen? That video summarized our prior context setting, as well as ending with the simple answer of, because he has to, in order for us to have free will. And again, that's the short answer, but you got 30 some odd minutes plus 4 other videos before that one that give you the full answer, and you have to watch it all to know to unpack that little quick sentence I just, blathered out there. You got to go look at it all. So please do go look at it all. I'm in no way trying to take away from the emotions that people asking these questions feel, such as a parent who just lost a child. I'm not a parent. I've had some experience with children in my 42 years. They're amazing. I love them. We haven't been blessed with them yet, but I could not imagine the pain of losing a child or anything like that. It would be just a lot. But I've tried to understand where they would be at, so I've spent a lot of time trying to set this context. So again, please go back because you can't shortchange someone who's going through something painful like that. As in prior videos, let's begin to address this question by setting the context of the one asking it. So here's the situation. Yes, you got to use your imagination here. You're a parent who's had a child in the hospital for the last 12 months, watching your 5-year-old be eaten by cancer. You've listened to the screaming cries of pain while the child undergoes bone marrow transplants. You've held your child while they're vomiting through their chemo treatments. You run your hand through their hair and you realize you're holding a ball of it in your hand. You've prayed, you've begged, you've screamed, you've cried at God for him to stop this torture, yet it continues. Sadly, the child eventually succumbs to the cancer and dies while in extreme pain. You are the person this question is coming from. How could God allow this to happen? Before we go on, that emotion there is deep, and who wouldn't feel that way? But there are, as much as I've chosen that simple example there are many other examples of children and innocence being harmed, and I'm not trying to discredit those. Those are all valid as well. We could, in today's world, sadly, we can come up with probably uncountable numbers of ways that children are harmed unfairly, unjustly, incorrectly, and are made to suffer. So that's all part of this question, but I can't go over each of them. So we're going to go with this one, but all those other ones apply too. So use your imagination to understand where this person is coming from. Clearly, anyone who doesn't appreciate the emotional nature of this question and attempts to answer it with cold logic will undoubtedly do more harm than good. So we will structure the answer to this question in the following manner. What is love? Is God a loving God? Does God love children? What is death? What is comfort in suffering? And what is the problem of sin? We'll start to answer this question by addressing the simple question of love. Specifically, we ask, what is it? What is love? If you are new to this series, then you seriously need to go back and watch the previous 6 videos, as the context for tackling these difficult topics is explained within them. You will not be able to evaluate this answer going forward. At this point, everything here so far has just been kind of setting the context. But if you haven't watched the rest, you're not going to understand these next parts. So to define love, we will start by using the biblical definition. Again, you need context. From 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8, it is stated as this: love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. So that's the biblical version. The worldly version is, as a noun, love is defined by the dictionary, is using Google Dictionary here, as being an intense feeling of deep affection or a great interest and pleasure in something. Now, itchy nose. I find it interesting as I analyze these words as part of the process of creating this video that the biblical sense is very much about others, where the worldly version is really more about self. That is, the worldly definitions are self-centered, where love is defined in the context of the self and what is pleasurable or deeply desired by the individual, whereas the biblical version is much more about behaviors that others would find to be good or that others would find to be bad. For example, Would I feel love for someone who required me to be constantly patient with them? Would that create a state of deep affection, great interest, or pleasure? I mean, let's be real. When you're required to be patient, you are not very happy. Usually something is not going your way. Someone or something is doing something that requires you to suppress negative emotions and wait for a better result. The worldly definition from the dictionary for patience is the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry, upset. So the capacity to accept or tolerate delay, trouble, or suffering without getting angry, upset. Those are not positive, happy, make you feel pleasurable type of things there. Those are things that get you kind of upset. Right, so let's do another thing. The biblical version tells us that love does not insist on its own way. Yet the worldly one is about self, the things that bring joy to the individual that result in positive emotions or feelings. Why is this interesting? Because what happens when love requires you to do something that doesn't result in positive emotions? What happens when love requires you to do something or experience something or go through something, put somebody else through something that hurts? I'm no expert on love, but what I see here is a clear trend that the worldly definition, which is constantly put before our eyes in the multitude of romantic comedies, romance movies, novel stories, novels and stories, magazines, Hollywood gossip, or even those amazingly wonderful Hallmark movies, is not the biblical definition of love. Those are lies. The worldly definition is a self-centered, selfish, what makes me feel good emotion that is not in line with biblical love. Why is that important? Language matters. Words matter. What we mean matters. When we ask why the God who is love can let bad things happen to innocent children, we must define what is bad and good. The use of the term, a God who is love, requires us to define love. Let me give another example as to why this is important. In the world, it has come to be that disciplining a child is frowned upon. It infringes on the child's ability to express themselves. I know I got spanking and I deserved it, and I would still do it. And I believe in spankings. I don't believe in beating a child or anything like that, but a little bit of pain appropriately applied at the proper point is a very good thing. It helps you remember, and I'm all for it. It worked on me, and it'll work on the kids these days too. But that's really frowned upon. Many would rather be the child's friend than their parent. They want to be their buddy. They want them to get them to do what they want to do and be there and not be looked upon and not have them be like, upset at them for punishing them. The Bible tells us that this is wrong. In fact, in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 24, it clearly says that he who spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him diligently. So from a worldly perspective, this may seem that the parent is required not to show love. After all, how is disciplining a child doing something that inspires the warm and fuzzy feelings of attraction, pleasure, or deep affection? Remember, in this case, I'm talking about the worldly love, so this may seem that the parent is required not to show worldly love because the child's going to be upset. They're not going to be feeling love while they get disciplined. They're not going to have a deep attraction or pleasure. Again, that's a worldly definition toward their parent. And the parent's going to be upset too. Why? Because we know the saying, this will hurt me more than it will hurt you, is cliche, yet it is absolutely true. It's painful for a parent to discipline a child, but in true love, it is done anyway. This goes against the worldly definition. As previously stated in our earlier videos, Yahweh, or God, is a God who loves us deeply and has been far more patient with us all than we deserve. If you haven't watched those videos, again, please go back and watch them because the context is so important. This whole story is said. For brevity, I'll give you the bullet points. First, God created the universe and us. We're subordinate to him, not the other way around. God gave us a perfect existence with no pain, suffering, disease, or anything bad, and we said we wanted more and disobeyed him. God personally saved us from slavery and persecution, and in return, we had a big old orgy and worshiped cows. God gave us all we could need. Again, he protected us daily, and we said we wanted a human king instead of him. God still had mercy on us time and time again as we made huge mistakes. We said we're sorry, but then once we were out of trouble, we told him to get lost. God sent his son, Jesus, to save us while we were still sinning. We mocked him, we beat him, and we crucified him. We told God to leave, and he respected our wishes. God's going to put an end to all this sin, and he is just. Now, that's all the other videos, so you got to go watch all those. God established what is right and what is wrong, and thereby established what is good and what is evil. We are subordinate to him and his definitions, not the other way around. God does not conform to our ever-changing, worldly, who's in charge, who yells loud enough, or who has the most likes, popularity definitions that are in today's society. He made it. He defined it. We follow it. End of story. God established that existence is more than just this life. It's eternal. The memories we'll have of this particular tangible life are but a fleeting speck on top of a flea seen from 1,000,000 miles away when compared to eternity. God measures things in a way far greater than we can even imagine. He's at the eternal level, while we exist usually from the day-to-day, or in some cases, the hour-to-hour level. He is a loving God, as he is love. You can reference 1 John chapter 4, verse 8. He defined love. He exemplifies love. He illustrates love for us in this, that while we were still in sin, he came and died for us. We didn't have to get better before he helped us. He just did it. He took that pain, he took our sin, and he humbled himself to a level lower than us and took our punishment. Even after we did all those horrible things to him before he sent the Christ. Think about that. Think about that for a moment. Let's put this in a real world situation. So you're at home, you're watching the morning news. Let's say you're a good person trying to do good things. You help your neighbors, you contribute to your community. You have a good job where you're respected. You have assembled a team of people, and you guys do good every day. You're active in your local education system, and you help by volunteering at a local shelter on the weekends. On the news, you see that a man was arrested for driving drunk and killing multiple people with his car. You further find out that not only did he kill these people while driving drunk, but he's also a child molester, and this leads him to drink obsessively due to the guilt he feels. The news continues on to basically describe that this man had no real life. He didn't help anyone in society. He wasn't a good man. He was basically the opposite of you. You're a fine example of a contributing member of society, and he was a degenerate. How would you show love to this man? How would you demonstrate your love for this man? Well, if you were Jesus, you'd show up to his court hearing. And when the judge passed judgment on him, you would ask to take his place on the judgment seat and take his place in punishment. Yahweh, God, Jesus Christ, has this love. He is this love. Let us now look to the definition of death. What is death? To people who are not believers, death is finality, the end, the eternal silence of non-existence, the light switch going off. It's permanent. To the Christian believer, it's merely the beginning of the eternal. Death is not the end. It's a rebirth, a new beginning into an existence that lasts forever. From a worldly sense, death is the end of our biological, emotional, physical being. There is no spirit, just organic goo and some stuff that happened temporarily in between the ears. To a believer, the eternal soul, the spirit, transcends the physical and moves into the eternal at this point, that is death. For this we celebrate, not mourn. We mourn the temporary loss of companionship. We mourn the pain that was felt in this transition. But we do not mourn for the one who passed away. Instead, we rejoice, for they are with the Lord in paradise, and we will see them again soon. As a Christian, the true mourning that occurs is when the individual didn't know Christ as their Savior. Christ is the only way. It's the only way to make amends to the Lord, to God, to Yahweh, the Creator. It's in the book. It's been handed down. Again, watch the other videos for all that context. Jesus says so in John chapter 14, verse 6. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Again, you need to watch all the other videos to get appropriate logic for all this so you can draw your conclusions. I know it's harsh, but you got to go watch that other stuff and this lifelong learning stuff that we're summarizing here. The links are all down below. So when someone doesn't acknowledge the Christ, then they have to face full judgment. They'll be judged based on how they judge others. That's a scary one if you really think about it. How do you judge other people? They'll be judged on their ability to follow God's rules. Good luck with that one. They'll be judged on their merits. You do enough good? For them, if they are found guilty on any account, judgment is absolute. Suffering is a long-standing problem for us all. It hurts. It hurts physically, it hurts emotionally, and for believers, it can hurt spiritually. Let's go back and remind ourselves of the context that the person who asked this question was in. A parent watching a child being eaten by cancer. The physical suffering the child feels, the emotional suffering the child feels. Does the child understand the spiritual yet? Are they even old enough? How about the parent's physical exhaustion, the emotional feelings of helplessness, the trauma of it all? This is truly suffering. For this, I need to bring up the suffering that Jesus went through as he was taken to the cross. What I want to know is, does God feel, can he feel what a man feels? Can he relate? Does he even get it? The answer is yes. Yes, he can. In fact, the night Jesus was to be arrested, he was praying. He was under such stress and anxiety that he was literally crying blood. But that's just the beginning of his pain and suffering. He was hit, kicked, punched, spit on. He was flogged. The flesh was torn from his skin. Thorns were shoved upon his head. Then nails were driven through his hands and arms and legs. He was nailed to a cross and raised into the sky, where his own body weight fought against the pain in his arms and legs, where his own body would eventually strangle him through slow, agonizing pain. Jesus suffered. Jesus is the Son of God, and he suffered. God, the Father, Yahweh, watched his Son suffer. He watched his Son be tortured and crucified. He watched his Son be mocked. He watched his Son be killed. If there is anyone who can relate to the parent's suffering in this example, it's Yahweh. It's Jesus. The sufferings of this world are temporary, but that makes them no less painful. Suffering is a time where we are all tested. Let us not forget that compassion shines in suffering. Is not compassion good? How can we demonstrate compassion without suffering? How could we say we are compassionate if there wasn't another person suffering who required us to be so? Suffering, in as much as it's ugly, can also be beautiful. And suffering is temporary. For the parent in this example, I say that the suffering of your child is the time for you to demonstrate your unyielding love and compassion. Share the gospel, tell the stories, cry together, be together, hold one another, reaffirm your faith, and bring comfort to each other that the sufferings of this time are temporary and fleeting, and that soon you will be together again in eternity forever. I lost my father to cancer. I watched him go from a wall of a man to nothing, as within 6 months the cancer spread, tortured, and ate him alive. We went through chemo and radiation. I watched as he suffered. I suffered. This is a real pain, and no one can take that away. It just simply hurts. But my father and I spoke about God. We shared about Jesus. We talked about the next step in his journey, and we knew we'd see each other again soon. I'm looking forward to seeing him again soon. I have joy and hope in that. I'm no parent, but suffering is not something that you have to be a parent to experience. And suffering is what this question is really getting at. We could ask the question differently by saying, if God is love, why does he allow suffering? Instead of, why does he allow innocent children to be harmed? In my last video, we went into detail regarding the genesis of sin in the world and how that led to suffering, pain, lies, betrayal, disease, etc. The sad truth is, sin is the root cause of all suffering, and that sin was birthed from our selfishness. We, you and I, we are the reason for pain in this world. We are the reason for suffering, not God. A parent is not the one responsible for the suffering of a child facing cancer. It's through the fallen world and everything that went wrong for millennia before us. But make no mistake, it's because of our selfishness as a species, as individuals, we're all selfish, that pain and suffering exist. Children are hurt because of other human beings doing bad things, not God. Why? Because they want to. Because they can. God gave us all free will, and instead of doing good, they use their freedom as an excuse to do evil. Disease and everything else that's bad in the world is a result of the fall of man, which is purely selfish. And everything that's continued since, the betrayal of God, the turning our backs on him, telling him to leave our lives alone, to get out, that's our fault, folks. That's not his. He doesn't want that. That his word expressly says he wants to be with us. He wants to have communion with us. He wants to save us. He came and saved us while we were still sinners. The idea that God allows bad things to happen and he's just sitting there laughing, or that he doesn't have enough power to stop it, is a lie from Satan. And I see that. It's in the movies, right? I love Justice League. I love Superman. It's so cool. Though today I'm understanding more and more how Hollywood is distorting good with evil, and even things that used to just be good actually were never really good, including Superman, unfortunately. But I digress a little bit. There's a saying, Lex Luthor, is if God is all-knowing, he cannot be all good or benevolent. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like that. And I see other people using it as an excuse to attack me on these videos. Why does God allow bad things to happen? It's because he's not God. It's because he's evil. That's not true, folks. Come on, just sit down and think about it. Watch these videos. Listen to the story. The story is the one that shows you that we're the ones that screwed up the story, not him. That's why bad things are happening. It's our fault. The problem is we don't want to accept that answer. We want to go blame somebody because we're a bunch of wussies. We can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. We're just a bunch of wussies, always looking for somebody else to blame. If you think about it, think about what happened in the fall of man, right? So here we are, we're in the garden, and Adam and Eve are told they got everything perfect, just perfect. I mean, they literally walk around naked. They don't care. They're not ashamed. They're happy. They're joyful. They sleep. They walk. They talk to God. They see God. Everything is just perfect. They walk around. They just grab food off the ground. They grab food off the trees. They're not worried about having extra fat. They're not worried about what TV to buy or what car to get. They're just happy. They're just happy, just peacefully happy. Satan comes along. He takes God's word and he twists it in the ears of Eve. And Eve sits there and eats the apple and then goes to Adam and convinces him to eat the apple. God shows up and says, "What have you guys done?" Hoping that they would confess, of course. And what do they say? They make excuses, right? Adam steps up first, and I like to call him a wuss, but, the bottom line is I'm a wuss too, and we all are. What does Adam do? Does he accept responsibility for his actions? No, he says, "The woman made me do it." What does what does Eve say? Eve says, "The snake made me do it. The serpent made me do it." They don't accept responsibility for their own actions, and either do we. That's the point. We don't. When we do, good things happen. May not be good for us, but ultimately good comes of us accepting our actions and standing up for them. I have to accept my actions here, the consequences for my actions, and putting these videos up. Still doing all my other videos, folks. Don't get me wrong. I take my Saturday, my Sabbath, and I sit here and I make these videos. I'm doing God's work, and I'm getting this stuff out there, and it's the only real day I can do it. And really not supposed to be doing that either, but I think, it's what I feel called to do, so I'm doing it. So judge as you will. But we're still going to be doing TRM videos. We're still going to be doing Eden videos. We're still doing Grow Tower videos. We're still doing ranching videos. I just feel that right now, personally, and you can hate me, you can disrespect me, or you can choose to be a good person and respect me, because I'm actually standing for what I believe in. In the face of utter cancellation, in the face of scrutiny, in the face of being made fun of, looking bad, I'm a professional, and I know I have lots of professional friends who are probably looking at this going, "This guy's wacko." But I believe what I believe, and I believe in the Jesus Christ of the Bible. I believe in the Word of God. And with that said, I know with what the Word of God says, when I compare the prophecy in the Bible, the fact that Israel's been made a nation again in a single day, just like the Bible prophesied years before, like thousands of years before it was even a thing. In 1948, Israel was made a nation again in a single day by the United Nations. And we have a clock that started at that point. Jesus is real. Israel's real. The Bible is real. The prophecies are real. And there are things going down right now that just reaffirm all of that. Read about the horses. Read about the seals. Jump to Revelation. Read it yourself. Read Daniel. Read those things. Read Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, I believe. You will read about what is coming, and it is coming. And I feel that at this point, I need to use this channel to get the word out. So that's what I'm doing. So with that said, why does God allow suffering to occur? We've already answered it, is he has to. He has to let it occur because of us. He has to let it occur because he gave us free will, and ultimately it's our choice to stop suffering, to follow his rules. That's what it takes, to say we're sorry to him, to acknowledge his son Jesus Christ and what he did to take our place. And the bottom line is the world doesn't want to do that, so suffering will continue. In fact, it will get worse, folks. It'll get a lot worse. So I pray this message finds you well. I pray that if you're on the fence about all this, I pray that this series helps you. Please feel free to reach out to me at TRM@TheRealMartian.com. Love to engage with you. I'm going to do as much as I can here to help people. If you don't have a Bible and you like one, reach out to me. We'll find a way to get you one, and we'll go from there. In the meantime, this is The Real Martian, out.